Okay guys, so now we are going to learn about the final keyword in Java. Let's just create a project for this. We'll call this final keyword. Let's add some more code. Finally, we're doing final. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a class, right? So we'll go to source, right click, new class, right? We'll call this final example. I just feel like putting this in a different class. So, the final keyword. So if you type final in your IDE, it comes up as orange, meaning it is a keyword. What is final? Well, in Java, final is a keyword that is used to essentially apply somewhat of a lock, a restriction on a field or a class. So it could be, you could have public final here. It could be a field, so we could have private final string finally. Oh no, we can't use finally string. Right? Obviously that's going to give us another red line, but it can be used as part of a field. It can also be on a method. So we can go public final void display final, and then we can have it, print out this is finally. So yeah, that's all the places it can be used. Let me just put it up here. There we go. Obviously, these all have different use cases and different rules, and sometimes they're unnecessary. So let's just control Z out of all these. But that is all the possible places that it could go, right? Now, it can make a variable unchangeable, a method unoverridable, or a class unextendable. Now, extending classes and things like that is going to come up soon. So don't worry about that for now. Everything will make sense in the next few videos. But I'm just going to give an example of how we can use final. So for example, if we wanted to set something in stone, right? We could go like final int, I don't know, maximum speed, right? But this cannot be null. Well, technically speaking, it can have an empty initialization, but we would need to add a constructor parameter for that to be allowed. So it needs to be initialized at some point, right? A final variable cannot have no initialization, but let's just initialize it here to 240, right? This is perfectly valid code. This isn't an access modifier, so we can have our access modifier before this. Currently this is default access. We can whack private before this, or public before this, or protected. We'll keep it as protected. And this makes this variable permanent and unalterable. So, for example, if we wanted to write a setter for this, so for example, if we wanted to go like public void set maximum speed, let's make this camel case, set max speed, right? And we have our int in here, which is max speed. If we try and set this to something else, we can't. So if you hover over it, it says cannot assign value to final variable, meaning that this is set in stone. However, if this didn't have final on it, we could easily do this, as it is a normal variable and it can be changed however we like. But when we have this final, it means that that is it. We cannot reassign the value of this. In other words, it's immutable. Immutable is a word that we use a lot in Java. Let me just correct that. So, obviously we can have immutable fields and final fields, but we can also have final classes, right? We can have immutable classes. So let's just create an example of that. So for example, let's get rid of all of this and make this a final class, right? This means that nothing else can extend upon this class. So even if we tried to set a value, then it would work differently than if we had just this without the final. Now, let me explain that. So let's say we have a private int, which is going to be value, right? And then we created a constructor, so we can go public final example, and we can actually pass in this value here, int value. We can go this dot value equals value, and that is perfectly valid because this field in and of itself is not final. And we can have a getter for this, so we'll go int get value, and we can just return this dot value like that. That seems like a fairly normal class, apart from the fact that we have final up here. Now let's go into main, and let's just create some space here. Delete this line. Let's create one of these final classes. So we can go final example. Final example equals new final example. And let's say 100, right? If we ran this, right, it works like a normal class. So if we did get value and then we printed this, so system out, final value dot get value. Let's run it. Hopefully we'll get, you know, the standard answer, right? It doesn't seem too different for now. But if we tried to extend upon this final example, so let's say final example extension, and then we went like extends final example, we can't do that. Let's hover over the error to see why. There is no default constructor available in final example. Okay, let's try and create a constructor. So let's go like public final example. We've created our empty constructor, but then there's still another error here. Cannot inherit from final example. And obviously the fix for that is to make it not final. So that is final, the keyword, wrapped up in a couple of minutes. We can see some more advanced use cases. Like, for example, we could try and override this class using overrides, which we're going to go into later in this series. You can't do that if it's a final class. And it also prevents inheritance and introduces immutability, so it can't be changed. It's sort of like a sealed letter, right? So if you have a final field or a final class, it's like a sealed letter. It's been written once and sealed, and its contents can't be changed, right? So that is how the final keyword works. There's many use cases for it. Hopefully you guys understand that. If you don't, please do comment below with your questions and I'll try and answer them. And see you in the next one.